listening to the Doing Motherhood podcast, where we talk all things Black mothers today. What is the goings on? Hello, hello. It's a new week. We are in a new month. It's November. Today's the 3rd, I think. Yes. Today's the 3rd of November. And we're just settling into the fall. Things started out a couple months ago, hot and heavy, moving, and we're still moving, but really kind of settling into this time of year. I'm getting excited about the holidays. I have holiday plans coming up, and just kind of, mellowing out. So in this segment of What's the Goings On, the truth of the matter is I don't know. I have no idea. I have not been clued into the news. I have not been watching anything about politics. Like, I know, going back to our conversation about the ban on abortions, I know that it got turned over, but then it got turned right back over, right? And then there's all this talk about critical race theory. It's just a lot. COVID has another strain, apparently. It's a lot. So I have decided, for myself and my sanity and for the sanity within my household, that I can only do what I can do at this moment. And I've got plenty enough on my plate at the moment. And I'm just gonna, head down, taking care of my household, taking care of my work, taking care of clients, and do my thing there. So I don't have any big news to share with you, but I will tell you one thing that I have been doing. Because I work so hard, when I come home, it's like I mind dump, right? I've got a mind dump. And so, but I want to make sure that I'm not like watching, too much trash TV or getting into things that are not very productive. I have gotten back into television, and right now, Black television is lit. I'm so excited about all the things that are on. So first of all, Insecure is back. Insecure is back. It's back for the final season. I'm so excited to see these characters again, apparently for the last time. But it's just been such a fun ride to see a cast of Black characters be able to represent us in what I feel is a very authentic way, right? It's a show that just lets us do our thing, right? Lets the characters do their thing, lets us be in the space that we are in, right? Living the lives that we know that Black people, those characters. We know those characters. Some of us are those characters, right? And so it just, it's a little bit sad. It's a little bittersweet, but I'm so happy to see that they are back on the screen. Atlanta FX is coming back soon. So if you're not familiar with Atlanta FX, that is Donald Glover's show, aka Childish Gambino. They have not been, I think it's been 3 years since their second season. So let me tell you, I always have a little bit of beef with Atlanta and Donald Glover, because we got the first season, which was amazing. And if you have not checked out Atlanta, you want to go back and check that out. Like, when I tell you the world that they created in that first season, we haven't seen anything like it on television before. And then they had to take some time off because Donald Glover got the part in Star Wars. And so they took time off. They came back finally for the second season. That second season, the second season actually really ties into what we're going to be talking about today in the 411. But that second season was so critical in terms of showing Black men on screen feeling their feelings and really tackling the way Black men deal with mental health. And so if you have not seen that, that season, you need to go back and watch it. And so it's been 3 years since the second season, and now we have the third season coming up. You know what? I haven't even seen the trailer for it yet. I know that there is a trailer. I saw a couple of days ago the new trailer, like something on my, maybe on my timeline or something, said Atlanta has a new trailer, and I just got excited and I forgot to go back and watch it. So I'm gonna go back and watch it. The next thing that I'm really excited about is The Harder They Fall, which is it's executive produced by Jay-Z and stars everybody, like everybody amazing right now. But Regina King is a main character. Idris Elba is a main character. And then a lot of actors that I believe are excellent actors, but I can't remember their names at this very moment. And so you want to make sure Zazie Beetz is one. Zazie Beetz is actually on the cast of Atlanta, and she is in the film The Harder They Fall. Who else? Jonathan Majors. He's another big one who is like amazing. He was in Last Black Man in San Francisco, and also, what's the show we were all into when COVID first happened? It'll come back to me later. But anyway, so look up Jonathan Majors and all of them. I'm so excited about that. I myself am an indie film fanatic, so I really love getting into indie films. I especially love it when it's a Black indie film and it's really, really, like really good. And so there's this new one on Amazon Prime called Gene of the Joneses. And it's, I just kind of I was just flipping through, so I didn't know anything about this film. Hadn't heard of it, hadn't seen a trailer, anything. I was just kind of flipping through my, the guide on Amazon Prime, and came across this movie. Taylor Page is the main character. She's the actress who plays the main character, Jean. And this story is just all about Black women and Black families and how the secrets that we carry, right? The secrets that we carry, the hardness sometimes that Black women put up because of all of the things, all of the disappointments, the heartbreaks, right? But I loved seeing this family dynamic of mostly women deal with, I won't give the story away. So, but there's a moment that happens at the very beginning of the film, and then we see how these characters relate to one another, how they relate to other people in their family, and then also the things that they carry themselves. And so, anyhow, check all those things out. I'm so excited. I'm just like, you know what? For this holiday season, I have my lineup. I'm a girl who watches things like 2 and 3 times. Like if it's really, really, really good, we're going to watch it 2 and 3 times. So the other one, but we're going to talk about this in the 411, is Colin in Black and White. And so I'll just save it. I'll save it. It's going to be so good. Before we get into the 411, I would like to let you know how you can support the podcast. You can support the podcast by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. That's like Apple, Google, Amazon Music, right? All those Spotify, all those different places. So if you're used to listening to your podcast there, make sure you go click subscribe on the Doing Motherhood podcast. You can also share the podcast throughout your network. So, let your girlfriends know, let your friends and your family know what we're doing over here and what we're talking about over here on the Doing Motherhood podcast. And finally, you can support us by leaving a review and a rating. I like the stars. I like seeing those stars pop up. So wherever it is that you listen to the podcast, please leave us a rating, leave us a review. I'm so grateful that you're here week in and week out. And y'all have been engaging on the IG page. I'm like, look at my listener friends. I appreciate you. Come do some more. I like talking to y'all. And it's the 411. And today on the 411, we are talking all things Colin in Black and White. So this is a film. It's not even a film. It's actually a limited series. So Colin Kaepernick is narrating a series about his life as a kid. And it spans from, I believe it's his 8th grade year. No, it starts with his freshman year. So we're following him through his freshman year through his senior year in high school. And, you know, all the trials and tribulations and things that he had to go through as a young athlete, a young biracial child adopted by a white family, and everything that comes, right, for what Black boys at that age, at that stage in their lives have to deal with. And so I want to set it up a little bit. So I, had heard about this coming out. I believe I saw it first on Ava DuVernay's. Ava is the director. She helped write this series for Colin, or with Colin. And she said that it was important to her that his voice rings true. So anyhow, a little bit of background. So the first time Colin Kaepernick came on my radar, I'm not an NFL fan. I've never really been big on it. I'm the woman that's like, if there's a man in my life who's into it, then I'll sit down and watch it. But outside of that, I don't really clue into it, right? My kids watch stuff and I do what I do. But Colin Kaepernick, the year that the San Francisco 49ers went to the Super Bowl, is when he kind of fell onto my radar. And I was just like, he seems special. I wasn't thinking special in the way that we see him now. I was just like, oh, he's going to be the great next whatever, right? Like, I thought he's going to be the great Black quarterback, or he's going to be the biggest name in the NFL. But he just seemed like in the interviews, as I can recall, he just seemed like such an authentic, genuine person, right? That kind of came across in the cameras. And then they got to the Super Bowl, and they did not win the Super Bowl that year, unfortunately. But it was not long after that Colin decided to take a knee during the national anthem in protest of police brutality and, in social justice, right? All of the inequalities that are happening right now in the US. And so without getting into, we don't need to get into a discussion about, was he right? Was he wrong? He was right. He was right. But we don't have to do that today, right? But what I think I see in this film is that this is Colin after all these years. I believe he first took the knee in 2016, right? So that's when all of that happened. And then he wasn't offered any other positions in the NFL. And there's just been the back and forth. I believe this is his way of telling his story and letting his story be known in his own voice. So I appreciate it for that. But what really got me as I was watching this series is the care that he takes to school young Black boys about what their place is in this world, right? And I'm sure that it's been done 100 different ways before, like I know that there are books, I know that there have been other films, but I don't think I've seen a depiction so honest. And I think that is that's what all my hype is about anyway. So let me tell you, I asked my son, it's so funny. I asked him, as soon as I saw it, I was like, hey, I want you to watch this. I want you to watch this movie with me. I'm going to tell you about me and Bryce Willoughby and our disconnect with films. But I wanted him to watch the film, and he just looked at me and he was like, yeah, I'm not going to watch that. I was like, Bryce, like, it's important. We have to watch things like this together. And he was like, I don't know. That's not the one. We can find something else to watch. So I'll give you a little backstory. Back when, what is the film? Fruitvale Station. So Fruitvale Station came out. I was so excited about Ryan Coogler as a director, and Michael B. Jordan was the main character in the film, right? So I was just like, okay, I want to go watch this story. Fruitvale Station, if you don't know, is the story of Oscar Grant, who was murdered by police at the subway station in Oakland is named Fruitvale Station. And so at that, this was, you know, it was during, is like all these police killings were starting to come on our radar because people are filming them with their cell phones, right? And so this is happening in a way that we haven't seen before. And I thought as a mother, it would be important for me to take my son to go watch this film. So we go watch the film. I cannot remember how old Bryce was. He was probably like 13, maybe 14. We go to watch the movie. It's a movie like all movies, and we're just watching and we're watching and we're watching. And then it gets to the dreaded scene where Oscar and the police officer get into the scuffle, and then the gun goes off. And I just bursted into a flood of tears. Like, movies move me. I do get emotional, like I usually do. You know, like I have the tear that no one sees in the movie theater because it's dark. You know, I can do my little, and no one ever really knows. You might hear me do that a little bit. That was it. But on that one, it was such a visceral reaction. And it was a visceral reaction throughout the theater. Like a lot of people had very audible reactions to that scene. And so I burst into tears, and my poor baby, he was like, we don't have to stay here. Mommy, we don't have to stay here. We can leave. And I was like, we need to finish the movie. We got to finish this. And he was like, we don't have to stay here. And so that began the distrust. Bryce does not trust me in choosing films for us anymore. And especially, like, I know he gives me the side eye every time it has something to do with race relations. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to go there with you today. So that's that. I have told him, he's out of town right now, but I told him that when he comes back, we are sitting down, and this one we are going to watch together. And I told him it's safe. Like, it's safe. So know that it is safe. Colin in Black and White is safe for you to watch with your children. But what I wanted to talk about today, like I said earlier, is just that it really helps. I think the reason that I find this to be a critical film, critical in the sense of like what we're dealing with socially in this moment right now, and how it can help parents inform and guide conversations that we all need to have with our children. And today I'm speaking specifically about Black boys, right? And so it starts out, and I mean, and Colin starts it out from the get, like it comes on. I'll be honest, when he showed up in his all black and his fro, I was like, oh, we're doing superhero. We doing superhero, Colin. And he's narrating, and it's a little, I don't know if clunky is the word, but it just felt a little strange or a little different in the very beginning. But they go right in. Okay, so he introduces himself, he's talking, and then next thing you know, he's talking about how athletes have to show up, how they have to, and he's using words like they want to see the savage in you, right? They want to see you be a beast, and you've got to go out there and you've got to prove it. And I'm like, okay, all right, yeah, that is the truth. And then he gets into the conversation about how these combines are almost a direct mimic of what slave traders used to do with, and I was like, oh shit, Colin is all right, we in this. We're doing the real. It's like he's doing the real. And so it touches on topics such of that, right? Like, how are Black men viewed in sports? How are young Black males viewed in sports? But it's not just a sports tale either, right? So I think that it's great for parents who have children who are athletes, and that's their route. But I also think there's so many lessons to be learned that are not directly related to being an athlete or playing sports in high school. Some of the topics that come up, hair, you know, we often talk about how Black women, like how the attachment that Black women have to our hair, how we express ourselves through our hair, how we are judged, a lot on our hairstyles and child, the bonnet conversation. Y'all ain't stopped talking about that. So we have these conversations all the time around Black women in our hair, but we don't give a lot of conversation to how Black boys and Black men feel about their hair. And so for that to be one of the first, big topics to come up in this series, the series is on Netflix. I was just like, this is perfect. I remember a time when because Bryce and I have done a lot around hair. My oldest son, Jahari, he was pretty he grew up when I was in the military and also with my dad, who's retired military. So it's just like, you go in every week to get this haircut. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Nobody's thinking about anything else. Go get your haircut, right? And so with Bryce, I was pretty much the same way. Like every couple of weeks, you're in the barbershop, you're getting a haircut. And I remember, I think Bryce was around 9 or 10 years old when he just would tell me no. He would. I'd be like, okay, we're going to the barbershop. He'd say, not this week. And then the next week I'd say, okay, we're going to the barbershop. And he'd say, not yet. And we played that game for a while, and he started growing out this this fro that I was like, I didn't like it. Not in And at the time, my hair was natural, right? And I had this huge fro going on. But Bryce's texture is different from mine. And Bryce wasn't doing what he needed to do to take care of the fro that he was growing out. So I forced him to get a haircut. Like he had this, I was like, you either got to pick it, comb it, something. If you're not going to do that, then you got to go get a haircut. So I forced him to go get his haircut. And then the next day, he went to school and he came home from school. And I just remember him looking like crushed. And I asked him, I didn't think it had anything to do with his hair. I thought it was something going on at school. And I was like, what's going on with you? What happened? What was your day like? And he said, everybody misses my hair. I said, everybody misses your hair. He's like, everybody misses my hair. And I miss my hair. And at that moment, I knew that I could not take over that part of him, that I realized that he was attached to his hair as his identity. And it hurt him, right? And so at that point, we had a conversation about what this head is going to look like. and I made some concessions. He made some concessions. But my point being is that, we really do have to take into account what Black boys are feeling about their hair. We think about the girls all the time. We're always talking about girls in their hair. But, Colin he talks about Allen Iverson, who was his idol at the time, and what we saw Allen Iverson go through in the NBA and their rejection of his full identity, right? But most of that, the way we saw it most, was in his hair and in his dress. I remember when I was teaching at a high school, there was a young man who would sit in my class, and he was such a good kid. Like he was one of those kids that came in and just did what he was supposed to do. He came to class, he did his work, he didn't do too much talking, right? Every now and again, he's a kid. So every now and again, he'd get into a little, whatever. But he was a really solid and good kid. He wasn't a kid that was ever on my radar as like a problem or somebody I needed to watch or, nothing. We had no discipline issues. And so then there was a day that a teacher approached me in the hallway and she was like, how do you feel about such and such? Cause he's just like, he gives me so much attitude, all this stuff. And I was like, that's not the kid I know. Like, what? I was like, that's interesting because I don't get any of that in my classroom from him. And so I asked him about it. And school rules. School rules. So school rules, you can't have hoodies. You can't have, they couldn't wear hats on their heads and all of those things. And when he came in my class, he had his hoodie on. But like I said, he came in and did what he was supposed to do. He participated in class discussions. He handled his business. So I wasn't really like, the hoodie it wasn't an issue for me. And so when I asked him, like, what's going on with you in Miss So-and-so's class? Like, why it seems like there's an issue and I don't get anything like that from you in my class. So what's going on? And he told me, she fusses at him about his hoodie. He refuses to take his hoodie off. I asked him, why don't you take your hoodie off? He does not take his hoodie off because his mother cannot afford his haircuts. And he does not want to come to school and be clowned about his hair. And he's a kid who takes a lot of pride in his appearance. You can tell by the way he dresses. He's we talking about a teenage boy now, because they don't mind showing up smelly, funky, wrinkly, like they really don't. If no one's paying attention to it, they'll walk out however they want to walk out. But this was a kid who, he was always fresh, head to toe. And so he did not want to be seen in that light. And I think that those are the things we don't, he was just seen as being rebellious and no one was asking him why. No one was asking him his reason. And and if we don't think that young Black boys are expressing themselves through their hair, if we don't think that they are, that they realize their identity is attached to their hair, this is how we end up doing them a disservice. So some of the other topics that come up in this series on Netflix are race relations. Obviously, Colin Kaepernick is a biracial adopted child. So he was born to a white mother, and the father, his biological father, is a Black man, but he was adopted by a white family. And so we see how he is in this, he's in a family home. He's with people that love him. They're taking care of him, but they don't understand his plight. And so we see him have just like these series of misunderstandings with his parents and the times that it hurt him, right? And so that's a huge one. But also outside of his personal family dynamic, how he knows that he was seen by other people in his community and just how he had to navigate those race relations, but navigating them as a young Black man who does not have parents who understand and can help him through it, right? So he's just kind of fumbling through these relations, these interpersonal relations with other people. Knowing yourself, Colin knew himself. He knew who he was. He knew that he was a quarterback, period. Everybody and everything else that he did, he's good in so many different things, right? In other sports. And every time someone tried to push him another way, he just always came back to, I'm a quarterback. I know that's who I am. And so I think that's an important conversation. I think it's important for us as parents to leave that space for children. I think I've said on this podcast before, my own parenting philosophy is that my children came to me from source. I'll just say source to keep things PC and cute. But my children came to me from source, right? They were gifted to me. I created them, right? But they're not for me to dictate what life is supposed to be for them. I firmly believe that our children show up on this earth, that every individual shows up on this earth with a soul contract to their source, and they've got that figured out. And our job as parents is to help nurture them in what they know of themselves. And so that's one of the key points I think that Colin really touched on in this. Of course, girls, of course, dealing with adults who think they know better than you. He had a coach that just, was like relentless, but Colin, through the film, shows children like how they can still be respectful, but how they can hold their own ground or hold their own, staying true to themselves, right? Knowing who you are and not allowing other people to push you around and push you into categories that they think are best for you, but may not be best for you. So all of this is in the limited series. I believe every single household that has a Black child or anyone who is working with Black children on a regular basis needs to watch this. It should become I'm telling y'all what to do. Let me make it clear. I am telling you what to do. That this is something that, the family should watch together and really start having conversations. See where your kids are. Let them start the conversation. Let them tell you what they got out of the film and allow them the space to have that dialogue so that they can start learning who they are and what's important to them and start to understand for themselves what their own personal values are for themselves. But then you're all having this conversation about the values that are in your home, right? And in your community at large. So check that out. I do want to talk a little bit about The Talk. All right. So as Black parents, we all know that there is a talk, there is the talk that we have with our children, within our households, with our children, with the children that we love, right? That talk is in regards to, specifically for Black boys, how to handle yourself if you have a run-in with the police. So I'll share a quick little story with you about the first time I realized I needed to have that talk with my son. We had just recently moved from New York City to Houston. I was separating from my ex-husband at the time, and so it was just me and the boys here. And we'd been here for a few months, and then my oldest son, Jahari, had a run-in with the police. And it was that the kids were playing in an empty apartment. A neighbor called the police. But what I saw was I'd seen police running past the apartment door, and I was like, oh my God, something's going on. Let me go get my kids. Let me go get my kids. And I went to the sliding door. We had a sliding glass door, and the police had children. My son was 12. These kids were between the ages of 9 and 13, and they had them all out in a police lineup, almost like something from Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society. Like I lost my shit and I went off on the police that day. Probably not the smartest move, but I had to go out there because I was just like, so what you're not going to do is socialize my child to believe that this is normal or okay. It was not. And so at that moment and on that day, I realized I've got to talk to my kids about, and him, because at that time he was 12 turning 13. Bryce was only like 4 or 5 at the time. But that's when I realized, like, okay, like I need to get serious about this. This was before Trayvon Martin, before, like everything that I think Trayvon Martin happened in 2012, like 2011, 2012. So it was before this slew of like all these cases that we've been watching for years and years. And I was just like, oh man. So I want to give you a quick rundown of what that talk is that I've had with my children several times since then, obviously, right? So number one in the talk is never run. Never run. That day, like 2 of the kids ran that day. And I told my son, the smartest thing your ass did was stay where they told you to stay. Don't you ever run. So that's number 1. Number 2, I tell my children, ask for your mother, right? So when the police start talking to you, if they put you in handcuffs, if they have you sitting on the side of the road, up against a wall, whatever, you say who you are, my name is, and my mother's name is, and this is her phone number. Please call her. My thought in that is that it humanizes them to the police. I hope. I don't know. I don't know if this is, we haven't had to use it so far, but my thought is that if there's a child consistently asking for their mother, that at some point the police will realize this is a child, right? And I say that because our children are adultified very early in their lives. My son, at the time that they had that police run in, was only like 12 years old, but he was seen as an older child. So we've got to make sure that they are seen as children. Number 3, say nothing about anything. Nothing. That's how I look at them. Do you understand? Nothing. You say nothing. The only thing you say to the police is, my mother's name is, her phone number is, can you call me? We're not talking about anything that did or didn't happen until I show up or until an attorney arrives. So say nothing about anything. My son is an attorney now, and that's his biggest selling point is say nothing. Just call me, right? Number 4, we can always save you if you do get locked up. But I can't save you if you die. So I need you to stay calm. I need you to be smart. And then finally, I'm sorry that this is your life. I'm sorry that you have to do these things that you should not have to do, and that other children that you know and hang out with don't have to do. But this is what our life is, and we have to work within what we know and what we have. And so if you do these things, these are the safest ways I can think to tell you to have an encounter with police that will bring you home. And that's our talk.